I don't know if you've been paying attention to the rental market lately, but you could probably do worse than to have roommates like this. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. We've got a link to it in the description below, and it's going to give you a pretty good overview of what we do here at the Horror Movie Syllabus, which, in short, is we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore, but this is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where I take a recommendation from you guys, a horror movie that I've never seen before, and I watch it for the first time, and then I let you know, is it syllabus worthy? Is it something that I think merits being on the horror movie syllabus? And these are recommendations I get from you guys in the comments, and this recommendation came from The Rose Bride, aka my friend Sarah, friend of the channel, longtime viewer, and Sarah recommended The Lodgers. And The Lodgers is a movie that Sarah described as very gothic and atmospheric with beautiful visuals and just really gorgeous, but also no happily ever after. She warned me that it was a slow burn of a movie. And it's interesting because she recommended it twice. She recommended it in our horror romance video, and then the horror romance doctorate level video. So she's serious about this one. She thinks it's a good movie, right? So she's mentioned it twice, but again, she kind of gave me a lot to go on in terms of what to expect with the movie, which sometimes I like to go in super blind, and this one I'm less blind than normal, but I think maybe that it helped a little bit to set my expectations going into this, knowing what I knew from Sarah's description of it. But did I love it? Did I hate it? Let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're looking at today is The Lodgers. And The Lodgers came out in 2017 and was directed by Irish director Brian O'Malley, who, aside from this movie, is probably best known for the movie Let Us Pray, which was kind of a little bit of a buzz movie, a little bit. And I don't know that we'll actually be talking about that on the channel anytime soon. But he also has done a lot of TV work. He's done a lot of TV stuff. If you look at his IMDb page, a lot of TV stuff. But I think that this movie is probably his most noteworthy and well known of his works. So this is the one to kind of judge him on, if you will, and it's, the one that we're going to judge him on in just a minute. But first, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is an Irish film that takes place in the 1920s and focuses on a brother and sister, a pair of twins that are living in this old dilapidated estate under some mysterious curse that forbids them from basically living their lives. They have to basically be in bed every night by midnight. They're not allowed to bring other people to the house, and they're not really allowed to try to leave and abandon the other one. So they're kind of stuck there. And of course, one of them falls in love, and some hijinks start to abound, and the mystery kind of deepens. But we're going to go ahead and stop there so as to not spoil the movie too much. And it's going to be a little bit hard to talk about this movie to some degree without spoiling a little bit, but we're going to do the best we can here because the movie is really kind of set up on a bit of a mystery about this curse. They explain the curse fairly early on, but you don't really understand what it's about, where it's coming from, or anything like that. And, it's set up this mystery, but the movie's strength isn't really in the mystery. And we're going to kind of get into that in a little bit. The strength is what Sarah was talking about, which is how gorgeous this movie is. It's beautiful. This movie is beautifully shot. It's just so atmospheric. That's the word. You're gonna hear me say it a lot. And if you look at reviews of this movie, which I looked up after watching it, you see that come up a lot. It's very accurate. It's very much traditional gothic horror. It's like got this classic ghost house, ghost story or haunted house setting. This look that is very familiar. If you've seen any kind of like classic ghost stories, you're going to recognize the look and the feel of this. They found this location, this house that is really cool. It's got a lot of personality to it. It's big and majestic, but it's also run down and dilapidated, which just adds to the creep factor of it. And creep factor is what we're talking about here. The movie is reveling in being creepy, being unsettling. It's really well shot. It's really well lit. The shadows in this movie work very well. The way that they use the space of this house, it's very large and yet feels somehow claustrophobic because these characters are trapped in there. They managed to make this space feel claustrophobic even though it's literally not. And it's done by the camera angles and the lighting, and it's making kind of feel creepy, very classic creepy factors thing. The sound design in this movie is excellent. Some of the stuff like the dripping water and the creaks and stuff like that. Classic ghost spook stuff. Again, if you don't like that kind of thing, this movie's not going to be there for you. But if you like a good ghost story stuff, it's going to work for you pretty well because it's really mastering the visual storytelling of a ghost story. Now, I keep saying ghost. That's interesting. And again, we're traipsing around, not trying to spell things too much, but the ghost effects, if you will, like when you see the ghosts, and I'm using the term loosely here because we're not really quite completely clear what the lodgers, the title of the movie, are in this house, but ghost is the vibe we're going with, so we're going to say ghost for now. And the effects, like when you see them, like when ghostly incidents happen, it's not always super great. Like one of the things about the ghosts that kind of takes me out a little bit is that they're really chatty. They talk more than I feel like they should be talking. And to me, that kind of undercut the spook a little bit of it. It wasn't quite as spooky, but only a little bit. Overall, it doesn't really do a whole lot to undercut this atmosphere that permeates the movie. It's very heavy with dread and kind of sorrow or depression or something like that. And it kind of ties a little bit into the themes, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But it feels like the air feels heavy in this movie throughout. And even though like when you see like the glimpses of the entities and stuff like that, and like you hear them talk stuff like that, it's not quite up to snuff with what they're setting in terms of tone and visuals. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't ruin anything. So I can let that slide because overall the atmosphere of this movie is just, it's top notch. It's really the biggest selling point of the movie. And that's important because some of the other aspects are a little hit and miss, in particular the relationships in the movie. Now you've got two leads, the boy and the girl, they're siblings, they're twins, and they're kind of abrasive, to be honest with you. And that makes sense narratively, like when you figure out what's going on with them and their history and stuff like that, it makes sense that they're abrasive. But they are hard to like as a result. So it's a little bit of a challenge. Again, it makes sense for the movie, but as a result, the characters don't really endear you to them, at least not initially, right off the bat. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And you've got the boy is, boy, the men, they're like 18. The boy though he's very strange. He's very weird. And again, narratively makes perfect sense, but he's real hard to relate to. The girl has a little bit more charm to her. She's the one who interacts more with the world, gets the food and this and that. She's the one that talks to other people. She's dealing with the money aspect because they're having money issues. There's an interesting side subplot that I think it works really well in the movie. But she's a little bit more charming, and it's important because she's the one who winds up meeting a boy in the town, and there's this kind of love interest with them. But that's where I kind of have a little bit of an issue because I don't feel that the love story is sold all that well. The chemistry doesn't feel really good. And for a movie that is a slow burn, like Sarah warned, it is a slow burn of a movie. It is taking its sweet time to get where it's going. It's really not any rush at all. But given that, you would expect that the characters would be fleshed out a little bit, and in particular, the romance would unfold in a little bit more of a natural way where it would be allowed to breathe a little bit and you'd be able to buy into it and you kind of see these characters getting drawn to each other. You'd understand a little bit more why this guy's infatuated with this girl because look, she's pretty, but that's about it. Like she's kind of prickly and not very welcoming. And why is he chasing her down to go and talk to her? Like we don't really know. And as a result, we don't really quite buy into it. And I think the movie could have taken some time to explore that a little bit and given us a little bit more motivation or a little bit more reasoning for why they're attracted to each other. Now, that said, and I'm dancing around again with plot, this might be intentional. Given where the movie goes, some of the chemistry issues and the love story kind of being given a little bit of a short shrift may be intentional as it tries to detail where the story is actually going. And so when I'm watching the movie, I'm having this issue with the romance. By the end of the movie, I'm thinking maybe that's not a problem after all. So that's as far as I can go on that. But what the movie's really interested in focusing on are the sibling dynamics, the family dynamics, which go into some really taboo and dark places. Like the crux of this movie is some taboo stuff. It really is kind of shocking, but it's not played in a really shocking way. But like this is where the movie's heart is. This is where it's at. the movie has set up this slow burn mystery with this curse at the center of it, this curse that's keeping this brother and sister bound to this house. Their parents are gone. We find out later what's happened to their parents, and it's all tied to this really dark subject that is uncomfortable, trigger warning worthy, to be honest with you. So, if you're a sensitive person, maybe look up dogs does a dog die.com before you watch this one, because it is trigger worthy, but I don't think that it does it in a very like exploitative way, and it kind of pulls its punches a little bit in terms of showing too much of the dark stuff, to be honest with you, maybe to its benefit, maybe to its detriment. Beauty in the eye of the beholder, I guess, on that one. But like it is setting up this dark secret, and it starts out with this nursery rhyme right at the beginning of the movie that admittedly is a little bit like clunky exposition, like this nursery rhyme that's not a very clever rhyme, even, to be honest with you, but is setting up the rules that these siblings must follow that are being imposed upon them by these entities that live in the house with them. And it's perfectly serviceable. Like, in terms of giving you the information you need to know in order to understand the premise of the movie, it's fine. It works perfectly fine. Now, the movie itself, and I think I've kind of alluded to this a little bit, is that it's light on actual scares, right? Like, it's set up as a ghost story, but it might not really be a ghost story. Again, there's some debate to be had there. And I'll be honest with you, the movie's not going to do the best job of explaining it in a literal sense. And again, I think that's by design, but it might really be frustrating. Like, when I was watching it, I was a little frustrated by that until I stopped and thought about it after the fact. And then it made more sense to me, and I was a little bit more into what they were giving me. But it's light a little bit on scares. It's really relying on atmosphere. It does pick up in the third act a bit, in terms of being a little bit more scary, but it really is just about dreadful mood. And honestly, I really got Turn of the Screw vibes from it. And then I looked at some reviews afterwards, and I'm not the only one. Now, it's funny because when Sarah was talking about it in her comment, she compared it to The Awakening, which I do see The Awakening in this. So she had her own comparisons to it. The Awakening feels very much thematically or mood wise similar to this one, and I liked that movie very much. So it's not an adaptation of any of those, not an adaptation of Turn of the Screw or any of that, but it does have that vibe. And it's kind of going with this mystery slash ghostly thing, but what it's really focusing on is trauma. And it's got this kind of and I wouldn't go so far to say like it's allegorical in the sense of like elevated horror, but it's talking about the perpetuation of trauma in a family, like family trauma, generational abuse, right? That's just kind of perpetuated throughout a family, throughout generations even. And that's interesting. And that's where I feel like it's doing something more interesting than just a straight up ghost story. It's trying to explore something pretty serious and dark, and doing it in a way that is subtle and interesting and ambitious, and maybe not 100% successful because it's a little obtuse, but I do think that as gently as they're trying to handle it, they're not shying away from it. They are pulling their punches and showing it, but they are very blunt about what it is that's going on, which I thought was really good. Now, like, the last time I can think of a movie like this that really tackled this subject in a way that was kind of like, anthropomorphizing a concept, or maybe like literally making it into a monster, is Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me. And if you've seen that, you kind of have an idea where this movie's going. So that's as far as I want to go in terms of that kind of a thing. But that kind of theme that it's exploring, tied into the plot and the lore that they've created around these entities, these lodgers that are staying with the twins, really works for me. That really is a selling point for the movie that, I'll admit, wasn't absorbing completely during the movie. It wasn't until I sat with it afterwards that really started to sink in for me, and honestly kind of changed my opinion a little bit about the movie. But did it change it enough to make it syllabus worthy? Let's find out. So, is The Lodgers syllabus worthy? Maybe. Maybe. There's a lot to like in this movie, and I've kind of talked about it, especially the aesthetic of the movie, the look, the visuals are absolutely stunning, and the acting is quite capable, even though the characters, the relationships are a little bit iffy, as I've talked about. But it really is that kind of theme that they're exploring, and doing it in such an interesting, kind of introspective, contemplative way, rather than exploitative, that really is pretty powerful. And yet, I still feel like this movie leaves a lot on the table. It leaves something to be desired. Like, I wanted more. When I was watching this movie, I really wanted it to fully dive into this dark subject matter, and really just kind of not necessarily be exploitative about it, but really just kind of show it and kind of be a little unflinching about it rather than being as subtle as it was. But it's doing that intentionally, right? So that's me kind of bringing my thing to it rather than it doing what, like examining it on its own terms and what it's trying to do. That said, I still feel like some of the emotional beats don't quite hit. In particular, the love story in here, the romance doesn't quite work. But again, in retrospect, when you see the whole movie, that may kind of be by design. So I feel like I wanted a little bit more from this movie because I was expecting it to do something different than what it was doing. And then I feel like if I rewatch this movie, I'm going to appreciate it a lot more knowing what I'm getting into. And even though despite like Sarah really kind of trying to prepare for this, she did a great job of not spoiling where this movie was going. And I think knowing what she told me prepped me enough to try to enjoy this, but not so much that I like got ruined by the surprise. But I still think I should probably watch it again to know for sure. Now I'm going to say right off bat, Sarah said horror romance. That's crazy, Sarah. That's crazy. Knowing what this movie's about, calling this a horror romance is insane to me. That's so dark. That's so ridiculous to me. Taboo horror, maybe, maybe. Gothic horror for sure. It would fit there. But for me, and this is where I kind of think where I come down on this. This movie is a fantastic example of dysfunctional family horror. Like, perfect example. And in fact, at the time of this recording, I just recorded the Dysfunctional Family Doctorate level series, and I swear to you, I wish I knew about this movie before I recorded that video because maybe this one would have cut there. And that is enough to say it's syllabus worthy because I think this movie would slide right at a minimum as an extra credit for the Dysfunctional Family because that is, to me, the core of what this movie is a 100% hardcore dysfunctional family exploring, like I said, generational trauma. That's what this movie's about, not romance. God help you, Sarah. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and fall in the line of syllabus worthy, but not for horror romance for sure. Dysfunctional family is probably where I'd put it. Gothic horror definitely could fit there. Probably a couple of other things too. Wouldn't put it in the ghosts or haunted house. Well, maybe haunted house. But there's a couple areas where I could put it in, but for me, dysfunctional family for sure. That it's such a good example of that's what's going to win me over and put it into the horror movie syllabus. And so yeah, that's where I'm landing on that one. So yeah, that's what we're gonna say about The Lodgers. It's an interesting movie, man. It's complicated and it's a slow burn, and you got to be patient with it. And it's not necessarily gonna do what you think it's gonna do. So I would say check it out for sure. I'm gonna probably watch it again because I think knowing the whole story will help me appreciate more of what's going on. But it won me over. And doing the research on it afterwards really help win me over. So definitely check it out and fall into that rabbit hole, man. Check it out and let me know what you think because yeah, it's very much worth your time. And now it's time for Horror Trivia Pursuit. So I'm going to ask a question that I'm going to read off this card. I've never seen it before. I'm going to answer it for the first time. All I have on camera, or hopefully answer it. And given The Lodgers is kind of a paranormal movie, we're going to go with the paranormal category on the card. And here's the question. In 2014's Annabelle, Annabelle is both a person and what inanimate object? This is got to be one of the more easy questions we've ever gotten on the channel, frankly. Like, I mean, you'd have to be kind of living under a rock to not know the answer to this question because the Annabelle movies, which are, of course, a spinoff of the Conjuring movies, are so popular and so well known. And I feel like Annabelle has kind of become a horror icon, if you will. Like, not maybe quite up there with Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and stuff, but kind of next tier on those. So, like, I feel like everybody kind of knows. Like, you don't have to have seen the Annabelle movies or even the Conjuring movies to know this. Like if you, and I don't even know if you have to be a horror fan because I feel like if you just like movies at all, if you go to movies at all, you probably saw trailers for this. And, Annabelle is front and center in so many of these movies that I feel like it would be very hard for you not to know the answer to this question. But maybe you don't, maybe you don't. And you're going to end up taking a guess. Like, yeah, I know this 100%. I know this. And I'm guessing the vast majority of you know this for sure too. But if you don't know, probably lock in a guess. I'm kind of rambling a little bit here, but there's not a whole lot to ramble here. I just feel like this is such an easy question. In fact, I think the harder part of this question is people not knowing that it's not just the inanimate object, that there's actually a person involved too. That's one thing that if you hadn't watched the movies, you might not realize is it's a person and an inanimate object. That's interesting. But time to lock in the answer, right? Like take a guess and lock it in because we're going to go ahead and answer the question. We've prattled on long enough. Ready? Okay. So my answer is, of course, it's a doll. Annabelle is a doll. And sure enough, a doll. That's what the card says too. Yeah, super easy question. And yeah, based on true story with like Annabelle being an actual Raggedy Ann doll and everything like that, and the Warrens. We've talked about them on the channel before. And there's a whole lot of stuff that people have their feelings and opinions on that. Whatever. You can dig into that on your own time if you want. For now, did you guess a doll? I'm guessing you did. If you had a bizarre answer that you guessed that wasn't correct, let me know in the comments below, because I would like to know what kind of funny answers people might have come up with. But that's going to do it for this week's video. The Lodgers is worth your time. Check it out. Keep your recommendations coming. I've got a list that I'm working on. I'm going through it. I'm really having a lot of fun going through this. You guys tend to do really good recommendations, so keep them coming. Next week, I'll be looking at something completely different. But until then, I'm just going to say class dismissed.